Greetings, everybody. It is me, the Mick, and it is another glorious Warhammer Wednesday. I have now designated Wednesdays as my time to talk about Warhammer 40K and all things Warhammer 40K, where I'll be uploading and streaming anything that has to do with the world of Warhammer 40,000. Now, that being said, I'm going to stick with the very short form videos that are pretty easy to digest and just give you kind of baseline surface level facts about Warhammer 40k. Now, if you want some more in-depth stuff, please either like, comment, and subscribe, something that you would like to hear more of or more about when it comes to Warhammer 40k, or you can also check out some other amazing YouTube and TikTok creators who discuss things about Warhammer 40k, such as Logan Thompson on TikTok, Major Kill on YouTube, and Bricky, who is also on YouTube. However, they have much more long-form videos than I tend to produce, which is not a bad thing, but this is mostly to just kind of accept people into the flock of Warhammer 40k and give them a synopsis of what they're getting into, so they're not just completely blindsided or confused, but also to just kind of spark an interest. If you'd like me to discuss more of any of the topics I've covered or any future topics and you want more, again, long-form videos, please just let me know in the comments section below. However, we are going to start with the complete and full timeline of Warhammer 40k. Now, granted, most of the things that we are going to talk about, there's going to be some things that are completely omitted, and there are going to be many, many things that we will just completely skip over or just not cover because it's not worth discussing in the grand timeline of the Warhammer 40k universe. But again, like, comment, and subscribe, especially subscribe so you can see when I upload new content. Now, without further ado, here we go, let's get started. So, to start off, we're not going to start in the 41st millennium or the years 40,000 of the timeline, because that's not where everything starts, because this is literally hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of years of history that we will be covering. So to start this absolute metric shitload of time is we are going to start talking about the Necron tier. Now, the Necron tier have kind of an unhealthy relationship with the sun that their planet orbits around, kind of like what you would have with an X. You can't just quite get away from them. So the Necron tier, unlike getting like emotional and maybe a little bit of relationship trauma from this, they instead got like severe forms of cancer and extremely short lifespans, to the point that they were willing to make any type of deal with anyone to increase their life expectancy. The one good thing, though, was that their planet was riddled with this living metal that seemed to, like, grow and fluctuate and bend and move and, again, grow. So they would build these giant pyramid-like crypts for all their ancestors. And they also tried to develop space travel, which didn't really work because nobody tended to live long enough to develop faster-than-light travel. So they just never were really able to get anywhere. However, they did discover the Great Old Ones, who were basically these, like, minus the omnipotence, godlike creatures who were practically immortal, but, they could be killed, and they were sowing life throughout the stars. So the Necron tier were like, hey, we kind of got a jip deal. Do you reckon we could, get just a little bit of a longer lifespan and not consistently die over and over and over and over again just because our sun is a wee bit too close? And the Great Old Ones were like, nah, it's not in the cards for you, my guy. We're just gonna dip. So that kind of pissed off the Necron tier because they're like, Great Old Ones, but they had no real way of, like, fighting against the Great Old Ones, so they just kind of took it on the chin until the Catan or the Satan, I'm going to say Satan, or the Catan for, the sake of the video, which were kind of also like godlike beings, but they were more like the embodiment of the stars. And they come to the Necron tier and are like, hey, we can offer you damn near immortality, You just have to build these dope-ass machines and these dope-ass metal bodies out of this living metal in order to do this. And most of the Necron tier were like, yeah, I'm down for that. Please, for the love of just make it so we're not consistently dying of this cancerous and terrible sun. So they built these giant warehouses, basically, and the unfortunate part is most of the Necron tier had their soul completely sucked out of them by these gigantic machines that the Catan tricked them into building, and then their essence or their intelligence basically became AI, except for like a handful of chosen few who were able to retain any level of their own individuality. And so, of course, now the Necron tier both have a hate for any living being, because all living beings now are able to live much longer than they were, but also they now have a hate for the Catan, but again, they're still not able to do anything because their technology, even with the help of the Catan, is not super great. In response to this, because now they see that the Catan and the Necron tier are both joining forces to fight them, because both of them have a vested interest in making them no longer alive, realize, hey, we have to do something. So they create two species of alien in the sense of the Imperium, which we'll get to that, called the Eldari and the Krork, which would later be known as the Orc. Again, we'll get to that, to fight the Necron tier. So the leader of the Necron tier kind of finally realizes, like, hey, we're kind of in a losing battle regardless. If we win, we'll still be slaves to the Catan, and if we lose, we'll be obliterated by the Great Old Ones, the Krork, and the Eldari. So what the leader of the Necron tier decides to do is, completely with the advanced technology that they have been given by the Catan, betray the Catan and go into pretty much a hibernation, which is fine for them because they're basically just minor intelligences in a robot body. So they go into their tomb worlds, they go to sleep for a ridiculously long amount of time, and everybody kind of forgets about them. The next thing we're going to talk about is the Eldari and the Krork. Not a whole lot is known about how the Krork devolved into the Orc. However, they had several thousands of years to do so. But the next thing we're going to talk about is the Eldari. The Eldari are the knife-eared space elves of the Warhammer 40K universe, meaning they're biologically immortal, they're extremely psychically charged, which is kind of like the Warhammer equivalent of magic, and they're just pretty much kind of assholes. And without anything to fight or to go against, they just start building giant worlds for themselves, and they're like, we're just gonna do stuff, because when you're immortal, you get bored. Some of the Eldari, however, got psychic messages from the Warp, which is like, if you think about our world where it's like, we're physical beings with spiritual attributes, the Warp is like a spiritual plane with some physical attributes. So they got some ideals from the Warp that's like, hey, if we keep going down the path that we're going, we're gonna birth a new Chaos God, and it's gonna kind of be terrible for all of us. And most, like, about 50% of the Eldari were like, nah, we don't care. And another 50% were like, yeah, let's go back into the Webway, which is like a place in between the Materium, which I've talked about before, which is the material plane, and the Immaterium, which is the Warp, which is kind of like that energy plane. And it's literally a fabricated togetherness of both physical and non-physical energy combined together to make a separate kind of universe or reality, right? So they go off and they do that. Well, the other 50% still do their, like, blood orgies, and they're fucking each other and fucking other species and just basically being debaucherous, murderous. And then that births Slaanesh, which is the fourth of the Chaos Gods. Chaos being the people who have reign over the Immaterium. You have Khorne, which is your god of war, but also the god of battle and honorable fighting and things of that nature. You have Slaanesh, which is the god of change and evolution and psychic powers. You have Nurgle, who is the god of disease and cures and, kind of the consistency of life, death, and the extent of death being, like fungus and stuff like that. Things need other things to die in order to live kind of deal. But then Slaanesh is the god of just excess of pretty much anything. If you want to bang too much, then you bang too much. And if you want to, eat too much, you eat too much. And you're kind of in Slaanesh's domain. It's just the excess of shit. So they birth that, and that kind of rips the galaxy in half. But we'll kind of put a bookmark there and go back to humanity. So humanity on Terra, which is what we would confirm as Earth, right? It technically, canonically takes place in our universe in the way we see things, just much further in the future. So according to Warhammer 40K lore, all the things that we've been experiencing are happening right now, and doing the things that they're doing, with minor differences or just things that we don't recognize are happening because they're happening billions of light years away and we can't fucking figure it out. So humanity starts and humanity comes up and we're doing the humanity thing and fucking up our own planet and doing our own dumb stuff. But in Warhammer 40K, the God Emperor actually is pretty much Jesus Christ, meaning that the three wise men in the lore of Warhammer 40K are three psychers. Again, people who are able to communicate with the warp, do things with the warp, and have powers because of the warp. They were extremely powerful psychers long before the tear between the Materium and the Immaterium, so they could still wander through the warp fairly unscathed. So they knew and saw that humanity was going to be beset on all sides from hundreds of thousands of different threats, so they're like, hey, we need to ritualistically sacrifice ourselves and about 1,000 other people in order to traverse through the warp and become one singular being that's going to lead humanity into a golden age that's going to save humanity. And they do that. And again, this happens during the biblical times, and that creates the God Emperor. Now, the God Emperor is this massive, and by massive I do mean physically and psychically massive person who is able to lead humanity into a golden age, but he doesn't do so right away. He kind of chills in the background for like thousands and thousands and thousands of years, just kind of biding his time and making sure certain things go a certain way and making sure that certain people do certain things, but not ever really coming into the limelight until much, much later when the Earth is kind of just fucked. There's so many, natural resources that have been almost completely depleted. Many people are suffering from low amounts of food, low amounts of resources, low amounts of places to live, healthcare, things like that. And it kind of comes down to, he comes in and goes, hey, I can lead y'all motherfuckers, but y'all gotta follow me. And he creates what's called the Thunder Warriors, which are the precursors to the Space Marines. So long story short, he comes up and he's like, hey, I got y'all. And then again, about 50% of the planet is like, we got you. And then another 50% is like, you a bitch. And he's like, nah. And he comes and swoops up Earth, which at that point is now so riddled with nuclear warfare that it's pretty much a barren, desolate wasteland. And he also ends up killing the Thunder Warriors, which is a completely different story in and of itself. And he has a grand vision where he's going to send people to Mars and send people into the big outreaches of, the known universe and the unknown universe. And, spread the Imperial Creed and spread humankind all throughout. During this time, it's mostly thought that the Emperor of Mankind is pretty much all for humanity, which to a point is true. But again, we'll get into that maybe in a different video. So now that humanity is all spreading throughout space, they develop AI. It's a golden age of technology with AI being all over the place, doing just about everything. And then of course, just like in any decent sci-fi thing with AI AI eventually turns on human beings. And, you know, it also comes with the fact that Slaanesh was born, which no one realizes that's exactly what happened, but the universe gets split in half. And now humanity, scattered across galaxies, is pretty much just fucked. They're kind of just in zero contact with other forms of humanity, and chaos is running free. At this point, chaos infects about 50% of the Space Marines. In fact, it is 50% of the Space Marines, and 2 Space Marine Primarchs, including the chapters that those Primarchs are involved in, completely disappear. And now we're just left with the remaining Primarchs and their chapters. 50% are loyal to the God Emperor, and 50% are not. There's something called the Horus Heresy and the Siege on Terra, where Horus gathers the other traitor Primarchs and runs a full siege on Holy Terra, which is Earth, and, you know, which is now a monastery of worship to the God Emperor. And as they're fighting, it almost rips the planet asunder. There's attacks on other outworlds, and it's pretty much the largest scale as far as Terran versus Terran, while you can still consider them Terrans fighting each other. And then, of course, you know, the Imperium of Man, which is the non-chaos portion of the Imperium, wins, but at a cost. So Horus, which is, you know, the God Emperor's favorite son, you might be able to draw some connections to some biblical here, I'm just saying, betrays the God Emperor, and that's the main traitor of the God Emperor to chaos, is the Horus Heresy, i.e. Horus the Primarch, is the primary leader of this rebellion. And with that rebellion, you know, he fights his dad, because the Primarchs are all based in pretty much the direct lineage of the God Emperor himself. He's like, no, you, I can do it better, and the Chaos Gods showed me a better and different way, and the God Emperor is like, nah, bitch, and they fight. And the God Emperor technically does win. He technically does kill Horus. However, the God Emperor also does technically die, but he's not fully dead. So they put him on this golden throne where they have to feed him like 10,000, I might be getting this number wrong, it's either 1,000 or 10,000 psychers per day to the golden throne, which they do religiously. Because remember, the Imperium of Man is nothing if not a religion. Now that the Horus Heresy is over and, you know, that's all kind of done, chaos is still on Terra, as well as being besieged by Xenos threats, such as the Orc and the Eldari, who now think of themselves as kind of the superior master race of the galaxy. And then the Orc, who just fucking love fighting. Then you have the Dark Eldar, which are the ones who didn't flee, but who are still trying to keep their souls away from the clutches of Slaanesh, who are just looking for people and souls to torture so that Slaanesh doesn't start actively feeding on their souls while they're alive and having a connection to their souls while they're alive. Because Slaanesh, for some reason, even though being birthed by the sins, quote-unquote, of the Eldari, still has beef with the Eldari, and no one quite understands it. You also have another contender called the Tau, which are basically the great space communists. Everyone has their place, and every place has their person, and they just kind of want to spread the greater good, which again is everybody staying within their niche, everybody staying within their place, and everything will go great because everyone is kind of caring for everyone else in their own special way, in their own special caste. And everyone just stays where they're supposed to stay. There's no room for advancement, and there's no room for demotion. It's just kind of a great big happy communist family that works but doesn't work. And they also recruit a bunch of different Xenos or alien races to their faction, but they're still kind of, you know, the babies of the universe because they're a very, very young race, and they don't even have faster than light travel, so they're not super important. However, a big important person is the Tyranids. The Tyranids are giant, bug-light, adaptable kind of Terminator-esque type things. They consume biomass to create new biomass, and they adapt based off of this gigantic, massive hive mind that they all share in order to become more effective killers and warriors so that they can continue to spread across the galaxy. To this point, no one really knows what the Tyranids' point is, besides kind of like an apocalypse level threat that everyone more or less is going to have to kind of get together and fight. But I digress. They're super neat bug evolution type things. And it's a massive threat to the entire galaxy. And they also are super attracted to extreme psychic energy, which most races minus the Tau have. And then you also have the Necron tier, with the Eldari moving outwards into space, as well as humanity now moving out into space again. Their tomb worlds are starting to reawaken, which means that more and more Necron are coming back to life, essentially, and being reawoken from their slumber. And now they're going to try and take out pretty much any and all living organic life, and they're living metal with zero psychic ability, so they're doing a pretty bang-up job. Thank you all so much. That's pretty much my brief synopsis of Warhammer 40K now. I've kept it around 20 minutes. If you want more of any specifics, please let me know in the comment section below, and I'll catch y'all in the next one.